Testing, testing. So I just need to shout a bit louder, do I? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. There's a goodly crowd here for a lovely summer's evening. Thank you for coming. I'm Mary, I'm the Secretary of the Sustainability Group. And this evening's topic is reuse and repair. I think the group's forays into waste so far have been more to do with prevention. So we've done a lot about packaging and single-use plastics. But there's a question of what about things that you do need, but they don't last forever? How can you prolong their life or maybe pass them on? So we've got three experts in the field. To point out, we are not experts. We're not running a repair cafe. But we're very interested in what might emerge in this area in the future, because I think there's lots of potential. So, no more ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Ranjit Singh from Library of Things. Round of applause for Ranjit.
I'm not going to do a lot of talking at this point in time. I'm going to show you a short clip from BBC London News. I thought that would be much more entertaining than me showing you a bunch of very dry slides. So if we... Oh, you can't? It's on? Is that any better? Yes. Okay, good. Okay. Shall I repeat that? Okay. Okay. So I'm from the Library of Things. I'm going to show you a short film that was a feature on BBC London News. I think it'll be much more informative than me showing you a bunch of very dry and boring slides. And then I'll answer some questions, if you have any, after the film. Thanks.
Now to something completely different. What do drills, sewing machines, sound systems and books have in common? You can get them all at your local library. Well, at least in Dalston you can. It's called the Library of Things, and it's a new social enterprise that helps people save money and reduce waste by renting out items. Frankie McCamley has been to check it out.
A library, for most of us, means books. But this library in Dalston is upgrading its home improvement section by hiring out many of the tools you'll need for the job.
We've got everything from cleaning to DIY and gardening, so you can borrow things like a carpet cleaner, and the drill is also very popular.
It's part of a scheme that's trying to reduce the cost of items we only need every now and then.
Actually started back in 2014 for us. A kind of like grassroots community movement of friends, neighbours and community groups came together to bring borrowing to their neighbourhood in West Norwood. So actually it's a movement that has kind of existed organically in other communities across the UK and Europe.
So in order to use the service, what you need to do is book your item online. You then come to one of the collection points like this one, hit collect, enter your email address, and once you've done that, whatever you've booked is going to be in one of these lockers. And for me, I'm in number 20. So it automatically opens. I then get my item and it's ready to take home. And for me, of course, it's the ice cream machine.
The scheme is being backed by the local council.
This enterprise is great because, for two reasons. One is because it's affordable for our people. We know we're going through a big cost of living crisis in the UK right now. And the other reason is obviously because it's great for our climate. We declared a climate emergency in Hackney. And, this is just one way in which how we're hoping to sort of, reduce waste.
All of the money raised through rentals goes back into the service, which hopes to expand from 6 to 16 sites over the next 12 months. Frankie McCamley, BBC London.
Is that any better? 1, 2, 3? Good. So before I answer any questions, I'll give you a very short history of how the organisation started. It was started by 3 women who in 2014, and they're still only 31 years old. And they started it as a community project in a car park in Crystal Palace. All the tools were housed in a shipping container. All the tools were donated. And they ran that project on the side. They had full-time jobs. And the take-up was fantastic. But it was very, very, very difficult for them to run for a couple of reasons. All volunteer-led organisations have this challenge of being open at the times people came to borrow. And secondly, the quality of the donated tools varied vastly. Some needed a lot of repair, and they found that if your first borrowing experience is not good, you're highly unlikely to borrow a second or third time. And also, people used them as a place to dump things. So they brought things that were unrepairable and really should have been taken to the right recycling place. So with that experience about 4 years ago, they decided that the only way this model was replicable is to have self-service lockers. So you eliminated the need for it to be manned. So they developed some software. They approached a fabricator to build some lockers for them, which could house anything from a carpet cleaner to a drill. And they opened that in Crystal Palace about 4 years ago. And now we have 13 locations all across London. And we are piloting a operation in Brighton as well at the moment, which doesn't have the expensive lockers, but it's inside a reuse electrical shop. You book it the same way, and you go to the shop and a member of staff gets you the item from the basement, and you take it away and then bring it back. So that's a little bit of the history. I'm happy to take any questions you might have about the service.
Thank you, Ranjit. Excuse me, folks, before we start the Q&A, we are being recorded. So you've got to appear on the film except for the back of your head. But we do need the microphone. Could you grab the mic? So the question was...
So how did the lockers get around the problem of people donating, bad items?
Oh yeah, right.
I can't hear that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's switched on.
Okay, I'll say again. Right. How did the lockers get around the problem of people donating bad items? Yeah. And how does the whole donation thing work now?
Oh, a very easy answer to that. We stopped the donation model. So we stock it with brand new tools. Also, we buy the best brand that we can afford for a couple of reasons. They last longer. Also, if you have the same equipment in multiple locations, it's easier to train the technicians. It's easier to order parts. And we got very lucky in the first two locations. People like Bosch and Karsha actually gave us the equipment for free. And the trade was we would give them data about what was breaking regularly and what needed maintaining more often.
I have a question. In terms of people borrowing tools, my concern would be whether they're using them properly. Is there tuition available to use particular items? I mean, things like, power washers or, drills and everything else. They might seem obvious to people who use them day in, day out, but actually you can break tools very easily if you don't use them properly.
That's a good question. So when you get your reservation confirmation, there's links to videos. Some of those links are the ones that the manufacturers produce, but we also have, some of them are of varying quality and not specific enough of the things that we find borrowers find difficulty with. So we make little videos to say that, by the way, just remember to do this, even though it's not clear in the instructions. We do that. But unfortunately, everybody doesn't do that. They just get it out and start using it, despite loads of prompts. Have you read the instructions and things like that?
I think I'm the next question. Just take me on a journey. So supposing I decide I need to wash the patio or something, and I need to borrow a power washer. Would I need to register on the site first of all? And how does the payment system work and all that? Take us on that journey. So I need to borrow this power washer. What do I do?
So you'd go to the website, you'd find the item and location, and then you would register if you're the first time user. They will do an ID check on you, and I'll ask you to upload your driving license or whatever other ID there is. And then you make the reservation, you'll be given a 6-digit code. You go to the location, you put in your code on the screen, the locker either pops open or it'll tell you where the locker is and you just push it open. You take the item out. On the screen there's loads of prompts as well to make sure you take every piece of equipment, because some of them are like a carpet cleaner, there's nozzles, there's the carpet cleaning tablets. But for the other tools, like the Bosch drills, they come in a carrying case. And then once you've used it, you bring it back to the kiosk, you put your code in again, locker opens, and you put it inside.
In terms of cost, what's the difference?
I've got a catalogue here that so I'll give you. So the most expensive item is the carpet cleaner, which is £22.50 per day. And a drill is £5 per day. Also, we operate a concession scheme where you get a 25% discount. So it's self-qualifying. If you think our prices are too high, we don't need any ID that you're on universal credit. You just tick a box and we will give you 25% off.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that it works best if you buy good tools, isn't it? Which shows that most of the stuff that is sold is rubbish. Only works for people using them very rarely and then when they break throwing them away. But the question is, you got free tools from having the data from Bosch. What about all the other suppliers?
That was for the first 2 locations.
But can you collect the data and then get free tools from other manufacturers?
We try to pitch that to other manufacturers, but we don't want to have multiple manufacturers because that creates operational headaches for us. And also we've managed to negotiate discounts from Bosch and Karcher. Not as high as we would like, but we're still in conversations with them.
I did once go into one on the Seven Sisters Road and was quite surprised at that time, which was a good while ago. The prices seemed quite high, so they didn't seem any cheaper than a regular commercial hire firm. Now, what you've just told me about prices, they do sound much cheaper. And so I wonder, what's the kind of relationship between prices and the kind of items you have compared with a commercial hire firm?
I think I'd stand behind every one of our prices. If you go to the HSS website, if you go through the whole process, first of all, the price doesn't include VAT. And then when you get to the checkout, they add the VAT. They also add there's a kind of booking fee they charge you as well. You know, when you register for the first time, you pay a £2 membership fee, one-off membership fee for life. So if you really do a comparison, I'm 100% sure all our prices are cheaper than commercial operators.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
What has been the role of local councils in Library of Things?
Oh, they're integral for 2 reasons. First of all, they fund the manufacture of the kiosks and they fund the initial stocking of the kiosks. So the capital investment in the service is done by the local authority. But they're also very important partners in amplifying the message, because the councils that we've worked with, and we've worked with councils right across London, the ones that do it really well, actually our borrowing rates are quite high in those locations. So we're in every newsletter. If there's a cost of living newsletter going out to to the residents. We're always in there. We don't even have to ask. We're just automatically in there with the good councils. Other councils haven't been as good, and the service take-up hasn't been as high. So they're a very critical partner in what we do.
So how are you operating? Are you operating as a sort of not-for-profit or a separate organisation? Are you part of the library service, or
no?
How are you operating?
No, we're a private company. We have an interesting and evolving corporate structure. We're trying to follow something that's being slowly developed. First by companies in Germany. It's called the stewardship model. You're running the company as a steward for the environment, for your local residents, for your local community and your employees. So we also have something in our Articles of Association which says that we will provide low-cost borrowing to all communities. And on the board we also have a mission guardian who holds us to our commitments in our Articles of Association. And that's evolving all the time at the moment. Because we're not a profit maximisation company. The reason we formed we used to be a charity. The reason we formed as a private company is to develop the software. The grants that we had access to, they would only give to a private company and not a charity. Even though it was a government body giving out the grants, it was Innovate UK. So we got I can't remember off the top, about a £300,000 grant from them to develop all the software that we use.
And the following question is, so if the local authority are providing space, money for the initial investment into the tools and the cabinets, are you then paying that back?
No. So there's no commitment for us to pay any of the capital back. We also keep all the income as well. And with that income, we employ a maintenance technician and a local marketing resource, which really covers, that's 80% of our revenue goes on employing staff, local staff.
Okay, one more question. Just these two, and then wrap up, please.
What would actually happen to you if you broke your tool or it lost it or something like that? Is there a deposit or something that...
It's a good question. We've resisted asking for a deposit, especially given our ethos I've just spoken to you about. If we're in a low-income area and we put a deposit of £600 on a £600 hold on your card, you may not be able to go out and buy food, which has caused us some difficulties because we've had some theft. That's why we introduced ID checks, which has the theft rate has gone down considerably. It's less than 0.3% of our income. And if you've lost it, we will charge you. If you've broken it maliciously or negligently, we'll charge you. But if it's normal wear and tear, we won't charge you. I mean, we have a borrower support team, which is our staff based here in the UK. They'll have a conversation with the customer. They'll coordinate it with the technician who goes out and looks at it, and then we'll make a decision. I think we're a bit too nice, because we also charge cleaning fees as well. You have to bring it back in a clean state. We're tightening up some of that. But also, we're a community asset, so we don't want to be overbearing either.
So I think we're going to take one more question, and I'll let's say Sorry, it's just that when you get them back, does anybody check them, or are users supposed to report if there's something, wearing out or any?
Yes, we're asked users to report things, and the system allows us to what we call hibernate the item, so that nobody else can make a reservation until a technician's been there. It's usually the water-based products that we have to be a bit more careful about. But a drill, sometimes the technician will not get to it between a borrow. And you'd think that causes a lot of problems. To date, very few. Very few. And we can't afford to have a full-time technician yet.
Thanks. There will be an opportunity to ask a few more questions at the end, but we'll hand over.
I'm going to sneak a quick one in. What's the most popular item? Carpet cleaner. Right. Can I say thank you very much to Ranjit Singh from the Library of Things. Thank you very much. And we will have a general Q&A with all our speakers to round off. But next I'd like to welcome Sophie Heathcott from Repair Cafe Nunhead. Tell us all about them. Thank you.
First things, can you hear me okay? Yeah? Hi, thank you, Mary. Thank you for having me. My name's Sophie. I'm going to ask Brian to be technical whiz. Would you mind moving the slides for me, please? All right, I'll give you a little nod when it's the next one. So yeah, I'm here to talk about Repair Cafe Nunhead. We're a repair cafe based in southeast London. I've been invited to talk about setting up the cafe, what we do, basically the story of Repair Cafe Nunhead. Next slide, please. Lovely. So initially, what is a repair cafe? It was a concept that was started by Martien Postma in 2009. The first repair cafe was in Amsterdam, and it's since gone on to be an international, worldwide organisation. The concept, volunteers who have specialism, understand skills in mending, matched with visitors who need items repairing. So they mend broken items. It's a great system. Items are saved from landfill. People save money. Neighbourhoods are able to share resources. People have access to practical skills and get to share them. It's a very accessible, local way for people to be sustainable. And it's great because people have quite an instant kind of joy from sustainable action of getting something fixed. Thank you. Next slide, please. Get to admire our repairers for a little longer. All right, so why did the cafe start? Initially, you've got me at the first kind of set up late 2021, and then a photo from one of our recent meets in April. So end of 2021, I was feeling a bit disconnected from my community. I was looking for a project to get involved in, and I went along to an event where the local community centre, The Green, who you'll hear a lot about in this talk, they'd set up an event where they were welcoming the community to come get involved, and they were having a bit of a revamp post-lockdown, inviting people back to the community centre, asking what people wanted to see. And they had a big board of suggestions of inviting the neighbourhood to say what they wanted to see from the community centre. So I went along thinking I'd get involved in something, and I saw an idea that someone had put up. I still don't know who it is. Someone put up an idea saying they'd love to see a repair cafe in the local area. And for me, that was it was that light bulb moment. I've always been a passionate mender. I make a lot of my own clothes, and I knit a lot. And with the process of making, you know how something's made, and there's a joy in looking after the things you've made and the connection you have with them. And you know, I'm passionate about living sustainably. I'd never been to a repair cafe, but I'd watched a lot of episodes of Repair Shop on telly. So, you know, I thought this could be this. Yeah, it's this light bulb moment really, where I thought I have the skills and the interest. This could be something the community would enjoy and benefit from, and it could be that thing that would give me that project post-lockdown, and I felt other people might feel that way too. So this photo is in December 2021. I was invited to the Green to have a little stall, a little table at their Christmas fair. And it was a soft launch, as they say, where it was me with some darning tools, and I talked to the community, and I explained, I'm thinking of setting up a repair cafe January, next year, come along. And it was that real confidence boost of people saying, that's a great idea, I have so much stuff that needs fixing, or I know people who'd love to get involved with that. And that kind of initial thing where I thought, okay, this is something that could become a regular thing. So then what happened next? Slide, please. Okay, so I was going to set up a repair cafe. I had to figure out how to do that. I had this wonderful head start by the Green, the community centre, who were just completely amazing and generous in their support, put this trust in me saying, I'm going to make this thing for you. So yeah, they offered us a space for free, which is incredible. The next stage was a lot of research. So as I said, I've never been to a repair cafe, but there was a couple of big established repair cafes in the UK, one in Glasgow and Bristol and Brighton. A lot of them had been closed for a long time because of where we were in the timeline with the pandemic. But I went online and I was trawling through articles, looking at their websites, trawling through social media. I mean, I think the internet is going to catch on in a really big way. I think it's really good for this kind of thing. Just to kind of build up a picture of what repair cafes were like and what this one could be like. I mentioned about Repair Cafe being an international organisation, like a movement, and their website, repaircafe.org, you can buy a manual, or how to start a repair cafe, which initially I was reluctant to buy because I was doing this on a nothing budget, but it was really helpful in cementing all the research that I'd done around the other cafes, which I was like, okay, I think we're on the right track because this is what the manual says. And also with that payment, you are registered on the Repair Cafe website, so you're legitimate in that sense. And then I started putting together a golden rules document, something that would give a structure, things like a visitor agreements. When people came in, they'd have a liability thing to sign, this is run by volunteers, I understand that, they're not liable for anything that happens, agreements about behaviour. Also, like the structure, that it would be repairs on site, people wouldn't drop things off, it would be free with donations, and I put together an FAQ, sort of cribbing from the other repair cafes that existed already. Even though we hadn't any cues from the FAQ yet, I was predicting what this kind of setup could be like. And that was really helpful in communicating the vision, the core values, just the idea, the whole concept of the repair cafe. When volunteers started getting involved, I could email them saying, okay, nice to meet you, here's this PDF, this is what it's going to be like, and here's the structure. And then the next step was sort of getting people to know about it. So online presence, social media was really important at the beginning and still is. So having an Instagram, posting on local Facebook groups, asking local accounts that shared the values. So like the bring your own packaging shop locally, and also physical like posters and flyers, getting the word out, and word of mouth. I mean, really that's been a key part of this as well. We've grown to around over 30 volunteers now, and I think word of mouth has been really fundamental in finding these wonderful people who, none of them are here, but I feel I need to acknowledge how generous and amazing all these people are who've come and made the cafe what it is with all their wonderful skills and generous use of their time. Thank you, Brian. Clap for Brian for lovely slide work, but a little bit more. So what do we repair? Here's a little snapshot of last year. This represents about 300 visitors that we had in the first year. As you can see, it's predominantly electricals and textiles. This is really interesting. I come to things like this. I can show you a nice pie chart. Who doesn't love that? It helps us plan resources and organise volunteers. We know that we need a majority of electrical specialist volunteers. Also, the stats are very interesting. We're hoping to apply for funding, and having things like this, all the data of what we've mended and what theme it is useful. Applying for funding, saying, what do you do? And we can show them this. Next one, please. Okay, a couple of repair spotlights that I thought would be nice to share. Our general rule for people, or guidelines for people bringing things in, would say if it's safe and you can carry it to the community centre, we'll give it a go. And the rocking horse really pushed the limits of the carrying rule. One of the biggest things we've done, but that was a wonderful mend. One of our woodwork volunteers were able to fix the rocking mechanism, and that was great fun. We got to have a go, of course. The record player was wonderful. A gentleman brought that along. His kids played with it in the late 70s, early 80s, and it's a plastic record player, but it actually plays real 45s. And taking it apart, we thought, okay, it's just going to be this one element. And it ended up being a whole project of creating a whole new rewiring system, because every new part would degrade another part that was so old, and so it's all remade. But the volunteer who did that fixed it, and it was wonderful. And the gentleman who brought it along gave it to his granddaughter for Christmas, so they were able to play with it all together at Christmas. Really lovely. And the answering machine, I still get a little goosebumpy when I think about this, but this was brought along because it was a visitor. It had her mum's voice on the tape, her mum who had passed away. And we couldn't fix the answering machine, but someone said a dictaphone could be the right sort of thing to play this size tape. So we had a call out on social media, and we found someone who had a dictaphone, which wasn't working, so we fixed the dictaphone. And then there was something about the speed of the tape with what the dictaphone did wasn't quite right. So we've had another stage of this project where we found someone who's going to digitize the tape, and that's where it is now. And so it's really been a lovely little fix, that one.
I've got one of those.
Oh, wonderful. What, the answering machine or the dictaphone?
No, a tape with my late mother's voice on it.
All right, so all this, of course, went really smoothly, and it sounds very easy, but of course there's been things we've learned along the way. I said we had this manual from Repair Cafe, and I'd done lots of research into other cafes, but a real kind of point for us over the first couple of months is getting our queuing system right. And this picture is our magic whiteboard where we have to do, doing, and done. You can't really see it because it's overwhelmed with repairs. But we borrowed from the Japanese concept of Kanban, which is used in the car manufacturing industry, on a production line, so nothing moves along until it's ready for the next stage. This is useful for us organising people coming in. We get their name, what they need mending, and the time they come in, and they go in the to-do, and they only move on when there's a volunteer available. That's also really helpful for managing expectations when people come in. If people coming in towards the last hour, we've only got 3 people on electrics, but 8 people are waiting. It's a really great visual representation of our capacity. Explaining the concept has been interesting as well. I think it's rare to have a thing where our aim is not to make more and it's not to make money. And initially, I think some people can be skeptical of that. Also, sometimes, we ask for people, it's a collaborative thing. You sit with the repairer, you have a conversation about what they're working on, and it's not a drop off at a garage or something, you drop it off for a service and pick it up later. I think sometimes that's interesting. We've got better at kind of getting people on board, and most of the time people are very into it. But yeah, I think once you've explained it's a free service run by volunteers, there's not really an argument against that, really. And then the volunteer induction, we've got better at supporting our volunteers, knowing what they need. So we, initially from that document of golden rules, we've developed a volunteer agreement and a code of conduct. And one of the nice things has been a buddy system. So if you come and volunteer for the first time, you're paired with someone who knows the Repair Cafe, and then you're best friends for life. And it's useful having someone there to sort of guide you through your first Repair Cafe, to give you, to have someone to answer questions, and also it's helpful for them to know if this new person that we're inviting in, if they're a good fit for the team. Thank you. All right, some more photos of men's. All these happy people who have had their things mended. You can see we get a lot of lamps, we get a lot of toasters. Our mend rate is around 60 to 80% per month. It really depends on what it is, which we're fairly happy with. And we find that the atmosphere is really nice. People come along, and even if they can't have something mended, if it's completely degraded or, it's just not possible, we find that people give us a donation anyway and have a really nice time. They're just genuinely delighted that someone took the time to try and mend it. Often we find it's beneficial because we've taken something apart and it's easier to then recycle the item because you've got the separate parts to sort out for recycling. So what's next? So we want to work with more groups in Southwark, the food banks and AgeLink, which is like an older person's charity, just working with different groups within Southwark to sort of spread the message of Repair Cafe. We're going to improve our accessibility. That's in the sense of people who are finding out about us. They're probably English speakers, they probably can use the internet, they can actually physically get to the green to bring an item. So we want to make sure that we're getting to the wider community who might really need the repairs. There's a big dream, one day we'll have a big van, we'll go around, pick up repairs, get them fixed, and then drop them off, but we'll see how that goes. We want to keep working on our website and branding, having a little place on the internet where people can find us that's officially ours. Build our volunteer network in the sense that people really enjoy the social aspect of the repair cafes. We all go for a drink afterwards after the cafe, and this Saturday actually we're having our summer social, having a little picnic in the local park. So sort of building on the community that we have within the volunteers as well as the community of visitors that we have. And I guess support more cafes. We are always asked if we could do more events. We always do the last Saturday of a month, and people say, "Oh, can you do more often?" And we always say, for our capacity, we can do once a month, but we'd love to see more cafes, like more, in every borough, in more post-lockdown popping up or relaunching again. And I think all this information should be open source and accessible, so it's wonderful to have been invited here and share the story. And thanks so much. The final slide. Here is us at our New Year's party. We didn't have a Christmas party, we had a New Year's party, and just some information about where you can find us. You do have to come to South London, that's the only negative for this whole thing, but thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Sophie. Does anyone have any questions for Sophie? Sorry, Scar, you're young and fit.
Great. Thank you very much. That was really, really inspiring, actually. I've got a few questions. One, is there a cafe there?
And there is actually, yeah. You get tea or coffee at the community centre.
Well,
so yeah.
I was going to say, is there a way of kind of potentially partially funding some of the activities through, fundraising, being donated cakes to sell in a cafe or some other way anyway? But
that's a good idea. I mean, just to answer that, because the community centre give us the space for free, they're always angling for people to come in and use the cafe and get their money through then. So I think that's the balance. But there is cake there as well. So.
The other thing was, presumably some of these things do cost money for spares. And who pays for that? Because you've obviously got someone who's coming in with maybe, a toaster which, might have cost £40 10 years ago. They're coming to see if they can get it fixed. And if the parts are like £15, £20 for new elements or something, how do you justify it and who pays for it and all of those kind of questions. And then the other thing was about tools. So if volunteers are expected to bring their own tools, or do you have a pool of tools that volunteers can use? Because presumably different people will do different jobs.
Yeah, a little bit, I suppose. The first one of asking about parts, part of the visitor agreement when people come with their items, part of the thing is they understand that if there are extra parts needed, that they cover that cost. We have a small amount of things like zips and threads, glues, fuses. We have like some small expendables that are funded by our donations, but predominantly it is the visitor coming to which will buy. You'll be advised by the volunteer what to do. And that's an interesting thing about the whole concept of removing the immediacy of the fix. That sometimes it's nice you have to come back next month and see us again, buy another coffee. And when you're asking about tools, predominantly it's the volunteers bringing their own items. We do have a communal tool bank, I guess, a tool library, to use the word, that we're growing and sort of expanding on, but mostly it is volunteers having an interest in that specialism and bringing their own items.
Thanks for a fascinating talk, Sophie. Can I ask a bit more about the people who come, both the volunteers and the clients, let's call them. To what extent are you able to reach out to people who say are lonely or the more vulnerable part of the community, or does it tend to be people who are quite good at fixing things and just want a bit more expertise in some way, quite outgoing naturally?
Yeah, I suppose on the sort of first for the volunteers, it's been a real mix. I mean, there's a I suppose a core foundation that this kind of this enterprise sort of attracts someone of an altruistic, creative, mending nature, if that's such a personality trait. And I wouldn't say that all our volunteers are like huge exhibitionists, outgoing kind of things. There is a real mix of people. Some who may be a bit more quieter, or some that maybe are outgoing, and a whole range of ages. We've got people who are finishing their degrees and people who are retired and just love getting involved in volunteering and could do it every week if we had it. So I guess there's that mix in there. And with visitors, it's mostly people who I'd say don't have the confidence to mend something. And one of the nice things is we see a lot of people, once they've had that experience, sitting with the volunteer, which is why we feel it's so important. It's not a drop-off service. They see something, they're like, oh, actually, that was quite easy. I'd like to learn more about that. And it is, it's sort of sparking that, that joy of repair, I suppose. Did that answer the question? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of maybe people who are lonely and on their own, and whether they would dare to come to something like this.
I would hope so. Yeah. I feel like we are often like there's a good opportunity for chat, and I think sometimes people have come along just because they wanted to see what we're up to, and that's also part of it.
Yes, you made the impression that it's not a weekly or not a weekly event. It happens every so often. So does that mean that you have to sort of clear the community centre each time and reset up each cafe? And so what about storage and so on? And items have been brought and left with you. What happens to them till they're repaired?
Yeah, so we do last Saturday of the month, so except December's, so every Saturday of last Saturday of the month. So we have a very minimal setup. We use tables at the community centre. Everyone's bringing their own tools. We don't have any storage at the green, like the communal tools, the glues, the fuses, zips, things like that. There's a generous spot in my wardrobe which is housing those right now. And we are talking to the community centre. Again, they've been wonderful in support. They only have so much space for all the events that goes on, but we've been talking about getting a shelf in the shed, which we're very excited about. So we can have some more established things there. But really, our setup is very minimal. It's, put up the tables, everyone's there, we put up the banner, and it's kind of, we're good to go.
So the volunteers don't take the item home with them to repair it?
No, it's always like, we don't do drop-off. That's one of the golden rules. So
and they themselves don't say, well, I've got all my lathe and so on back in my workshop, I can take it back there.
But we try to avoid that because we've on a couple of occasions where, we've kind of arranged with the visitor, the volunteer will take it away. I don't know, it's a whole different setup. So we've tried to avoid that unless it's like a very specialist thing. There was a wonderful cuckoo clock. One of the gentlemen who is a horologist, and he said I've got to take it home because it's just too delicate to take apart. But mostly we try and do them on site.
Well, thank you very much, Sophie.
Thank you.
And we might come back at the end, but please, big round of applause for Sophie from the Thank you. Thank you. And our final speaker, we welcome from not far off, Chris Setz from Haringey Fixers. Chris, welcome.
Okay, Brian. So, the first thing to say is what a great talk, what two great talks. Thank you so much. We also started a repair cafe in Haringey just a couple of months after Sophie did. And so we've been going since April of last year. And I'm somebody who's lived in Haringey for a few decades. I spent 25 years in Crouch End and spent a lot of time as a volunteer in Sustainable Haringey, in Transition Crouch End. I started off when my kids went to school on a campaign on Hornsey Town Hall, which we're still maintaining. I get involved with Haringey Friends of Parks. I run their Facebook group. And so I'm very committed as a volunteer to helping people and to giving what I've got. And as somebody who's been involved as sort of in a technological industry all my life, and as a householder, I've learned a whole range of skills, partly out of necessity and partly out of interest. And what I started to do a few years ago was to go and find repair cafes like Sophie's and offer my own services as a volunteer repairer. And it was a bit of a pain because the nearest one's in Hackney. And so I thought what a good idea would be if we can do one ourselves. And we made some choices which were very, very similar. If you went to Sophie's Cafe, which sounds much better run than ours, or came to ours, it seems they're very similar. We made one or two decisions which made it slightly different. And one of them was, which you might consider, is we asked people to book a free slot. And by doing that, we know what is coming. And that's very, very useful. So I can see, because like Sophie's, our events are once a month. We have the first Saturday of the month and the third Saturday of the month, so we've got 2 cafes. I can see what's coming. And so what we do is we'll say, okay, this thing's coming, we Google it, we find the YouTube video which explains how to take it apart or common problems. Very often we also talk to the bringer, we call them bringers, the people who bring the stuff in and say, have you tried this? Is the fuse and the plug gone? And we get quite a lot of repairs which we never see. So they fix them at home. And so that's great. So what we aim to do here is, what I've come here to do is to try to use our local connection and our understanding of the tremendous success that this group has made. I can remember right from the very beginning, I don't know if any of you remember the DEFRA 600k grant for the supermarket roof. I mean, this is a very successful and influential group. And I would be delighted if, as a group collectively, because of these talks, that you actually did go forward and make a step towards this in your portfolio of activities. So next slide, please, Brian. So I moved a few years ago to Tottenham, and I moved into this large 4,500 person council estate, Broadwater Farm, which is absolutely superb, and it's surrounded by arguably the best park in Haringey, a 64-acre lordship wreck, with a wonderful community centre which was more or less hand-built over 20 years by a dedicated group of volunteers. So next, please, Brian. So there's the repair cafe in the park. I say we do 2 repair cafes, one in the estate community centre, one in this lordship wreck hub, so the first and third Saturdays of each month. Next, please, Brian. And so we put up adverts and posters. You just get a feel for what we do. Most of our publicity is the fact that we've been there a long time. When we first started our very first event, 1 person came. Next, please. And so just a little bit about our process, which is also slightly different from some other repair cafes. What I've found as a computer and technology expert throughout my career is that there's a sort of difference between working with an independent expert, a professional, and having a community event. In this community event here, you saw by the questions, people are able to contribute perspectives, and there's a more equality of status. And so what I've tried to say to people is, we've all got immense troubleshooting skills. You've all got here today, you arrived on time, you're fully dressed, you've made a series of decisions to get here, which are fixing various issues to arrive. We've all got that, particularly older people. Older people are incredibly good at asking superb questions, as anybody who was ever a teenager can remember with their own parents. And so what I try to say is that to be involved in this sort of thing, we remember that the Sustainable Development Goals led to the idea of a circular economy, and the sharing economy is part of that circular economy. To get to this point, we do not need to employ expert repairers. What we can do is we can use a troubleshooting approach, and it first starts with confidence. You need the confidence to think, what is this? Could I fix that? What's wrong with it? And a number of questions, we'll go through a few of them now. But the confidence to take this apart, a lot of people say, oh, I couldn't take that apart, I'll break it, and then it'll cost a fortune, it'll be wrong. So that first step is about confidence, and yes, confidence comes from experience. If you've fixed 10 of these, no problem. If you've never fixed one, you may not be able to have that confidence. So, next slide, please. So this is the thing that we mostly rely on. There are very few things that somebody else hasn't done before. And that could be true in life. And so almost everything we get, somebody's been annoyed by the problem, or they've fixed it and they've been kind enough to take a video. It's amazing the amount of even very obscure things. And so, you know, one of the very earliest questions we ask is, let's see if we can find, and it doesn't take a lot of searching skill to go on YouTube and add the word fix, repair, tear down. If you can put the model number in, sometimes that's great. And what you'll often find is people all over the world, particularly all over the first world, patiently explaining how they've repaired something, and also making comments which often rely in changes, because no manufacturer wants the poor quality, the hard to repair nature of their products exposed on the internet. Next, please, Brian. So some of these questions are quite difficult because a lot of the things we repair, you could argue, we should not spend time. So I'm very lucky in that people have gathered around this idea, and when we started, we had a number of questions to ask ourselves. And so I asked two people I knew well, somebody who lives on my estate and somebody who lives nearby, if they would first of all get involved in answering some of these questions. And the first one, could you stand up please, Friedrich? First one is Friedrich Ernst, who's an active member of the Green Party, a long-term resident of Haringey, and a very talented person I admire. Thank you for being one of our trustees, Friedrich. Whilst you're in this mood, I'm also honoured because two of our most successful repairers have made the journey to come and be with you tonight, and hopefully, you know, you could get an idea of what they're like. So Mahmood, if you would please stand up. And so Mahmood here has been here for a long time. And Boyd, if you would also please stand up. Boyd, like many of our repairers, is a professional. And so we have a collaborative and a collective approach. I do a lot of talking, and we're asking people all the time, is this thing worth repairing? Because people do bring in things which are old and may have a sentimental value, but frankly, you know, if you remember the embodied carbon approach, if you look at it holistically, there are some things which should not be repaired. Next one, please, Brian. And hopefully Mary will be able to make these slides available if you want them. I'm not going to read out the slides. I'm just saying to you that we question what we're doing all the time because we genuinely want to make a big difference. And one of the things about the people who are involved with this, and I hope this will be true with you as well, is that I ask people to be naked in their ambition to get more out of this event than they put in. Because I feel that after a long time working with volunteers, and a volunteer myself, unless you get more out of it than you put in, I suggest to you that it's not very sustainable. And so I'm very happy that my colleagues have come today, and I can look them in the eye, knowing that they're happy to come again and again as much as they wish because of this sustainability. So next slide, please. This is one thing which I'm always going on about. I mean, as I'm sure you know, Sophie, some of the things we fix can kill people. So we don't fix microwaves, we don't fix electric blankets, but we could fix a kettle, and maybe we could get that fix wrong, and that could result in a child's death. And so safety is, as our organisations often say, safety is a massive priority for us. And we do run a risk. And an example of the dilemma is that nowadays, as I'm sure we all know, there's a massive amount of planned obsolescence built into everything we use, microphone, everything. If you fix something, you extend its life. Maybe it was very carefully designed to fail after a certain time. So by fixing it, by repairing it, by introducing some way of lengthening its life, it's possible that you'll create stress in that item and that it'll malfunction, may even explode. So it's a dangerous thing to do to try and expand the life of something. So not everything should be repaired. Next, please, Brian. This is the most common mistake we made. So on Saturday, Mahmood chose to fix a travel hairdryer. He took it apart and he fixed it and tried to put it back together again, and in doing so he tested it, didn't work. He called me over. I tend to be the person who says to people, okay, we can't repair that, because otherwise the repairers will go on all day trying to fix it because they'll never give up. What we didn't realise was that one of our other colleagues had tripped the RCD on the mains. So the reason it wasn't working is because there was no mains to it. So the biggest issue we have sometimes is, and it is something like the fuse, has the fuse gone? Is it actually getting power? So next one, please. So we don't do we're not trying to sell you willing volunteers and how wonderful it is. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I tend not to want to put people, partly because I'm an older person who used to be handsome and no longer. But here's a quick shot of inside our cafe. And as Sophie said, we are a cafe. And also, it's not great because we also do fruit. There's lots of fruit usually. And so what this is typical. It's quite noisy. It feels very unorganized. There's all sorts of people involved, but it's very collaborative. It's not the doctor will see you now. It's how can we fix this together? And so we, like Sophie does, we have conversations about sustainability. We talk about troubleshooting techniques. We talk about the whole greenness, if you like, of what we're doing, because we have a very receptive audience. And our aim, in a way, is twofold. It's to try and obviously fix the thing. But it's not, we don't fix it, I don't fix it. What we try to do is we try and fix it together. So on Saturday, for the first time, we're going to be doing an event at a primary school. So we've got some stuff that the children want fixing. But it's not a question of, okay, little boy, you sit there and be quiet whilst I fix it. It's, can we work together? And would you tell me how to use my skills? So you deploy my skills. And so that combined with the troubleshooting approach, what we're talking about is a coalition of willing people trying to get something done. And you know from the activities of this group that if you get together, you can pretty much do anything you like. Next one, please. So here's Mahmood, again, who is very modest, so I won't spotlight you anymore. And Mahmood's had a long career in industry, in the mechanical industry, and this is the first time that he's started to repair things. And so I think that's if you like, it's a lesson that although he's a professional in his own career, and he's had a long and interesting life, he's never done this sort of thing before. And as Sophie said, and as Ranjit has also talked about, people get into this and they really do enjoy it. And I hope I can say in front of you that he gets a lot out of it himself. And that's the situation we want. We want to enable people to enjoy this. And you know the joy of fixing things. We all know that. But particularly for young people, if they can understand how nice it is, how neat it is, how good for the planet it is, how cheaper it is to be able to fix something, then I suggest to you that we can enlarge that and start to fix some of the other problems. Yes, please, Brian. Right, I didn't know how to characterize somebody who's had something fixed. This is an absolutely charming person. One of the joys is You meet people and they're just really great. And she's been in several times with an amazing range of things. The first thing she brought in was an electric golf cart. I didn't really realize those things existed. And a very modest young man, about 30, he came in and said he would like to help. And I put the two of them together, and he just fixed her golf cart straight away. And so we get some people who come in. This is, as you can see, it's a Hoover. And she had that fixed in this collaborative method where she sits there and the repairer sits there and they talk about how they're going to fix it. And she is asked to guide the repair so that there's some ownership of it there. Next, please, Brian. And here's Myra, who said it was okay to show her face, to show the photograph as long as we didn't show her face, because that's it. And again, she's a wonderful person who I knew sort of slightly beforehand. She showed me yesterday. She's coming to the school with the kids tomorrow because she's got such wonderful skills. She showed me what a French seam is, which I didn't know. One of the things the children wanted to be fixed was they've got hammocks. Mainly it's bikes they want. And so I just wanted to say that, you know, she retired over a decade ago, and there's no pressure at all for her to come at any time. So there's a selection of people in the community who've got specific skills. So when the booking comes in and it says what it is, I Google it. I know a lot of stuff because I've done a lot of fixing, but there's a lot of stuff like this I cannot do. And so what I'll say to Myra or somebody like Myra is, could you please come in at round about 2 o'clock or something? The person's bringing the thing, whatever it is. And in this case, she was actually with Dorothy, who refuses to have photographs taken, even though she's a lovely person. They both came in to fix this sewing machine, which they did. Next slide, please, Brian. And then this is Alison, who I'm in awe of, because I say, I'm just not sewing, I'm sewing machines. I mean, I'm a computer expert. I understand how machines work. I can't figure out how a sewing machine works, and I can't use it. I've never been able to sew anything. I'm just hopeless. But Myra, I mean, fortunately, you can't see. So the picture on with a hand is the hole in the cashmere jumper. When she asked me, when I went over and said, can I take a photograph of the finished mend, I put the camera, I said, where's the hole? Where's the fix? I couldn't see it. So she's brilliant at doing invisible mending. And as I say, and this is Alison is somebody else who doesn't come very often into the cafe, but because we've got this stack of repairs we know are coming up to a month or greater in advance, I actually say to her, you know, would you mind, could you come in please and fix it? So this is a much more inclusive repair cafe than perhaps some others where, you know, you need to come in and be there all day. Next, please, Brian. And this is another point I wanted to make about Jude. Jude was a professional footballer who's now very active. He works in the sports centre, which is part of the community centre where we have one of the repair cafes. He's a lovely guy and he's full of skills. And I'm rubbish at badminton. And in a way, he's saying to me, you know, I'm saying to him, we can help you fix this. And so we did. We fixed his heater when it was needed. But what he's saying to me is, you know, I'll help you with your skills. So it's a wonderful exchange, and people are grateful, and there's an opportunity for you to be enriched by this experience. Next, please, Brian. So we're a repair cafe. We want to start some sort of library of things. It would be particularly appropriate here in Muswell Hill, I suggest. There's another idea which I'm working on. Forgive me for this, it may be a bit complicated. If I could win Carla's consent to actually hold on to a power drill, maybe then when Mary wanted to borrow a power drill, this would be free, then she could contact Carla with both permissions, you know, possibly even a photograph, and then make an easy appointment to go around to Carla's and borrow the drill, use it, keep it for as long as she wants, until the next person wants it. Now, if the postcode that people signed up to this was N10 only, What could happen is you could have a lot of items in your house which you were a custodian of, which you didn't necessarily own, and which you would never see again if it was passed to somebody else. So this is an organic way. There's lots of issues here which Ranjit particularly has solved a lot of these in a particular way, and Sophie will know well about maintenance, about, I thought it was a very good point about, you know, it's no good just borrowing something. If you don't know how to use it, you can hurt yourself and you can get it wrong and you can damage the item. But I'm suggesting to you that this is this sort of, I'm calling it community repository, but it's, I can't think of a good name for it. The idea that you could, between yourselves, lend each other things, and that the thing that you lent was no longer your property, you were just a custodian of it. I mean, I trust you as a group to come to a decision as to, if you want to participate in this area, the sort of thing you would want to do. I'm just putting that forward as an idea. And so what we are here to say to you is, because we've got some experience and we've got some resources, if you decide, for example, to open a repair cafe, and it could be in this room, maybe it'd be better, there's a couple of charity shops in the high street which I notice are empty. You know, there's plenty of community venues, some of which you might consider to be suitable. If we can ask, say, a couple of you to commit to doing a trial of a repair cafe, perhaps 1, 2, or 3 times, we'll do everything you don't want to or can't. So we'll do the promotion, we'll do the insurance, we'll pay the venue if they need a fee, we'll bring in repairers. The aim is for it to be locally sustainable. So, you know, we're not an organisation who's going to sort of administer from afar. We're asking you from your own resources to maintain, to make this hyper-local and sustainable. And we think, having done it in 2 cafes in Tottenham, we think that you can do it too if you want, and we would be honoured and privileged if we can be part of the way forward for you. So our final slide just sums up what we can do for you. Yes, please, Brian. We can do the logistics, we can produce the repairers, and we can do the promotions. So thank you for the honour of talking to you. And please, any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them.
Thank you very much, Chris. And yeah, are there any sort of questions for clarification? And I think it'd be nice if people could just reflect on what they've heard and what they might see going forward. Anyone from the floor?
That's Brian. It's a shame you haven't got your own microphone, Brian.
You mentioned one word that I was thinking about, which was insurance. Are all your fixers covered by some sort of insurance in the way that the professionals would be?
No, we do have what's called repair cafe insurance from a major insurer, which is both public liability and employer's liability. But there isn't, in the insurance industry, there isn't sort of something which is only for repair cafes as far as I know. It's just a general insurance. They make some exclusions, like what they call hot works aren't allowed. So insurance is available. It's not too expensive, but it's not very specific.
So it's similar to what, say, an electrician would have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's insurance aimed fundamentally at community groups. One of the mystifying things about the insurance is that there's no limit on the amount of events you could take. So you could do 100 events for the same cost as 10. And so if we, for instance, put our label on one of your events, then our insurance will cover your group.
I think with the European Union's bringing out right to repair legislation, I think, isn't it? Do you see in 30 years it will be a lot easier to do this?
I think it'll be a lot quicker than that. I mean, as Sophie mentioned the Repair Cafe, repaircafe.org, which, as she said, is in 2009 with Ms. Postbar started the Repair Cafe movement. Another organisation, the Restart Project, which is a very strong European, UK-based organisation which has lots of Repair Cafe details on it. They're specifically campaigning for the right to repair. And there's been lots of rapid changes. Recently, Nokia announced their second phone. They've got the G22 and the G42. The G22, 150 quid, good quality phone, completely repairable. Apple have made big changes. They've introduced for the first time a repair kit. And they've said that some of their newer models are designed so you can take the screen off more or less yourself. So there's quite a rapid change. The one I want is what's happening, and it's been happening for a couple of years in France, where when you go into the equivalent of Currys, you see a repairability index. And this is based on accurate figures you can trust of how long things will last and how easy they are to repair. They're saying that batteries in phones must be changeable by an ordinary person, which most of the phones aren't. They've forced Apple to give up their funny plugs for USB-C. So I think that America, there's now 14 states where they've passed right to repair. Last year, there was just one. The Americans have realized that they say if you can't fix it, you don't own it. They've realized, particularly for tractors, which are really closed source and you can't fix your own tractor, and the Americans seem to have asserted themselves and say, oi, I want to be able to fix my own tractor. So I'm saying that within the next few years, we'll see a dramatic increase in the amount of products which are in the market and have a selling point of repairability, easy to repair.
Just following on from that, really about the repairability. So often you hear this about, I mean, I've been fixing motorbikes for years, and anything else I can kind of lay my tools on. And one of the big criticisms about modern electronics is that and vehicles with electrics on them is you can't repair a component, you have to repair the whole module. It's like, oh, the whole ignition, motherboard needs swapping out, or the ignition system needs swapping out, or you know what I mean? It's not repairable. Absolutely. It comes as a self-contained unit that you unplug, chuck it away, buy a new unit, plug it in. It's not repairable in that sense. So, I think the tradition of repairability, say from back sort of probably, wartime, where things were less electronic, much more mechanical, much more about sort of craft-made items, like furniture, like, lots of things that were made by hand. Actually now things are made by machine, and microelectronics are not repairable. They're made under microscope, sort of hermetically sealed conditions. So I think it's definitely a different world that you're trying to repair in terms of products. But, I welcome that idea of particularly a lot of the phones. I mean, I can't tell you how many phones I've got at home from my kids just sitting in the drawer, and I kind of think, it's outrageous. I've still got them. They should be recycling them. But, even that's quite hard to find, a place where you can take phones that you're safe with data and all this other sort of stuff. So it's just a thought, really. Thanks.
Well, Muswell Hill was built at a time when this was seen as a much sharper problem than it is today. Thinkers and writers, particularly on the left, felt that the industrialization of the society would mean we would lose all of our artisanal skills. And William Morris, who was a very, very sophisticated and influential person, particularly in the early labour movement, he wrote extensively about this problem and how to solve it. And his work gave rise, with lots of other people, to the arts and crafts movement, which tried to re-emphasize this. But it's not all as awful as it sounds. I mean, the Eileen MacArthur Foundation, she was the woman who sailed around the world. I was going to play this, but it's 6 minutes long. It's a video about the circular economy. One of the points it makes is that we're going to have to change the whole manufacturing process so that individual components are reusable. And so, for instance, it's quite amazing what the EU have done in saying that, batteries need to be replaced. They've said that mobile phone manufacturers are not allowed to sell phone chargers, and that phone chargers have all got to be standard. Well, to me, the next step is to make each one of the components of the phone reusable. And we're beginning to see, obviously, the Fairphone, but there are more than just the Fairphone. There's the Liberty phone. We're beginning to see that this modularization can be swapped out, and we can redesign the society quite slightly so that we manufacture things. I've got to the point where I'm thinking that in Alexandra Palace, we've got the potential of a factory. So if we had a circular economy where things were reusable, what would Haringey make in Ali Pali that could do that? So for instance, I would like to see printers with their cartridges, all the cartridges the same. And I'd like to see a society-based organisation to make the basic components of reuse. And again, Eileen MacArthur's video goes into this better. But I suggest to you, as it is with repair, that it's going forward in leaps and bounds, because there's like a capitalist dam here. Once a manufacturer comes out with modularity as a selling point, if they succeed in the market, the others are obliged to follow. And I think there is, in the first world particularly, a worldwide consciousness of these issues. I mean, these are not just issues for Muswell Hill Sustainability Group. The issues of sustainability, where we're destroying the planet's natural resources, is an urgent priority for everybody. So I'm, again, a lot more hopeful that repair cafes, the repair cafe movement, the right to repair lobbying that we indirectly do by supporting Repair Cafe and the Restart project, they have brought about significant changes, and they will continue to bring about significant changes, so we'll reach the modular world that you implied was a good thing.
Can I just say, I don't think it's the electronics that go wrong, really. In mobile phones, they're very reliable. It's mainly the software goes out of date, the manufacturers don't want to update them. I've replaced the screen and the battery in mobile phones. And so you can extend the life of a mobile, you can double the life of mobile by replacing the battery. Maybe eventually you want to get a new one, but it does extend it.
Well, part of the EU legislation is that all phone batteries must last 5 years. They've gone further. They've said that spare parts must be available for 10 years and must be reasonably priced, and the information associated with the spare must also be available, because the manufacturers don't like any of that. But yeah, with respect, as you can see, your aspiration is right on the money. It's the thing that we want to do. But again, forgive me for sounding grandiose. It's only if we get together and make specific moves towards the things that we endorse as sustainable that change will happen. We actually need to do something. And in a way, as an older person with lots of skills and experience, I feel obliged, as part of being a member of the society, I feel obliged to do that. And you've done that here. Particularly your leaders have done this. You've taken your wealth as a community and you have deployed it for a positive end, which is going to make a good difference. So I'd encourage you to carry on.
Thank you very much for very inspirational talk. I just wanted to respond to something you said about the community repository. I recently heard about Freegal. I haven't really had a lot of involvement with it, but it sounds like a very similar concept where it's attempting to do much the same thing. I wonder if you think that it is, or does it differ in some way from your idea?
Well, the significant difference is that, Freegal's great. I'd encourage everybody to use it. There's also Olio, which was written in Crouch End, which is a lovely app. The difference is that what we're talking about here is the fact that within 10 minutes of this building, how many power drills are there? How many toasters are there? What we're talking about is sharing, whereas Freegal is transfer of ownership from one place to the next. So most people, there are some silly stats about this. Your average power drill, a large percentage of power drills don't get used at all in a 3-year period from buying them. So people, I'm the same, must admit. I've got some tools in my house that I have never used. And so this is about the simple maths of within 10 minutes of this building, there may be 100,000 items in people's homes. And of those items, if we can have them moving about, we will reduce quite considerably the need for, the cost of, the manufacture of common items that we can share. So that's the significant difference between us and say, Freegal or anybody else. But this isn't us. This is me suggesting that this is an idea which you could run with. And if you decide to go in this direction, you will decide exactly what works and what doesn't. I mean, Sophie and Ranjit, they've got a lot of experience because we tend to iterate. We start off with this marvelous dream, but the practical reality is, as Ranjit said, that some people steal things, so you have to change and iterate your system. So if you take this idea of accepting help from us on a repair cafe or a community repository, you will iterate it so that it becomes your own.
I was just thinking about this Bosch vacuum cleaner. After 4 or 5 years, I suppose, we get about a minute out of the battery, if we're lucky. We've looked up on the internet. It seems to be a pretty skillful job to replace a battery. Maybe Haringey fixers could do that. But also, the cost of a new battery is more or less half the cost of a new piece of equipment. So my question is, how do you deal with costs for replacement components?
Well, as Sophie said, I would like, and I think we'd all like, to give everybody the spare parts for free. But what we do is, because we have a collaborative contact with the repairer, we frankly guess if they've got any money. And so, for instance, somebody brought in some beautiful old cups, and she clearly had no money. And so I gave her some araldite. We fixed some of the cups, and she took the araldite home. It's only worth a £5. And so we've got a stock of things, as Sophie mentioned, glues and materials and stuff, some equipment that people don't normally have. And what we'll aim to do, so with the school, for instance, they've got bikes that they want us to fix with the children. We'll give the brake cables, the brake pads, a number of things. We'll give those for free. But if you, Brian, were to bring in that Bosch device into the repair cafe, we sort of take a view as to whether or not you could afford a new battery. If you couldn't afford a new battery, we couldn't run to the cost of that.
My friend actually called one of the vacuum companies and said she just couldn't afford a battery, and they gave her 50% off. Sometimes actually they've got loads of them in stock and no one's buying them. So it is actually one of those questions. She was shocked. It was £75 she couldn't afford it. So ask a question maybe. Sorry.
No, please. No, please. This is what we do. We put people together, and that's a great idea. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Okay, we've had 3 amazing sessions, and I just wanted to ask about 3 questions of people in the room, really, which is, would you be interested in doing a library of things type scenario? Would be the first question, so let's see a show of hands. So if there was a library of things in this area, would you use it, do you think? So just in terms of use, yeah. And then fixing, would you use the fixing service? Yes. Okay, and then a tougher question. Would anyone want to be involved in setting up either a library of things or a fixing service?
Oh, yes, please. HaringeyFixers.org. You can get a free repairer's ticket.
There was a model, Chris, for the community repository.
Yeah. What do people think of that, the community repository? Sort of sharing stuff around. Yeah, some nods there. Okay, all right.
On the library of things, I'm really interested around it. What is the impediment in developing another one? Is it just simply finding local authorities who can work with it? I just wonder what's the impediment.
Yeah.
That's easier than what it's worth.
Okay, just to quickly ask.
Yeah, it's funding from the local authority and finding a suitable space.
Are you talking to Haringey?
I've had conversations with them, and actually they have it on their manifesto. I haven't found a location, or they haven't proposed any locations to me.
As it said in the slide, it's very much our aim to do a repair cafes in each of Haringey's town centres. And as part of the repair cafe, we do want to do a library of things. I'm hoping that this organisation can sell the deal so that in libraries, for example, which is a very common place, the council will shell out to get one established with, say, 50 or so items. But as you know, in Muswell Hill Library, there just isn't the space. And so what we're hoping is that local people will say, well, why don't we use that charity shop that's now empty? Or the council are saying to me personally, yes, we will help you with premises. So we're very much committed to asking for your help in establishing a library of things here.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think we'll have a think about it. What we can do. Obviously, Mary and I can't do much without anyone else here's help. And obviously we have a great committee as well, but we need to work out, on top of all of the other things that we're doing, how we can do it. So always dependent on voluntary help. Just like to finish by saying thank you to all of the speakers, to Sophie, to Ranjit, to Chris, and to the guys that turned up to support Chris. So thank you very much. I did say Sophie, and thank you to all of you for coming and listening. Thank you.
So there's an after party now, is there?
Thank you. And thank you to Brian on audiovisual.
Yeah.
And Jill and Layla on refreshments and reception. And notices, before we go, next Thursday, the 13th of July, is Green Drinks Night at the Maid of Muswell pub. And do come if it's not too far a trek for our visitors. And then we'll be back in September. We're going to have a Green Travels evening. And then we'll be going into our Green Open Home season. So we will let you know all this through the mailing list. Make sure you're on it. Thank you very much. Good night.
Makes them very much to